Welcome to Beyond the Press Release, a production of Agoracom in which we take the time to speak with small cap executives after they put out important news. With us today, happy to have him back, Vivek Rajgaria, President General Manager, Thomas Mika, Executive VP and CFO of Poet Technologies, trades on the venture into PTK, and for our friends in the US on Poet F, Poetf on the OTCQX, which is one up from the OTCQB. Look, we know a lot of people have been joining us and jumping onto the Poet story. I think a lot of that's because we've been able to finally cross the barrier to get people to understand what Poet does in layman's terms. So I'm going to give you a brief intro that I give on other interviews, so that for all new people who are joining and following the company now, to understand Poet, you have to understand something first, and that's the surfing habits of you and me. Every day we're binging Netflix, watching YouTube, shopping on Amazon, streaming on Spotify, and we're even Zooming meetings like this. And we do it all demanding the fastest speeds possible. Anything less is unacceptable. But we don't just demand that, we want more. While we're doing all this, we also want artificial intelligence to know our preferences and recommend the next product, the next movie, song, video, travel destination, so on and so forth. Anything less than the speed of light, plus supercomputing power is unacceptable. So all that computer power comes from servers, data centers, and cloud computing. But what connects all of them? Poet Technologies brings light speed to that world. Make all that happen on such a grand scale. 24/7, 365 requires two things: enormous amount of computing power, and you also need speed, lightning speed for these servers to transmit the data between each other to serve up to you and me at home and at work. That's where photonics comes in. Photonics devices create, detect, and manipulate light. The laser generated light is fundamental to sensing, computing, and telecom, which require the fastest transfer of data possible. Poet has developed a unique, disruptive, and differentiating new entry into the photonics market. That's what we're going to be talking about today. It's the Poet Optical Interposer Platform. And we're going to talk about that right now. The headline: Poet Technologies reports significant progress on Super Photonics Xiamen joint venture. Guys, welcome back.
Thank you.
Sorry that you guys had to listen to that intro. No, you guys know it inside out. But for new investors, we're just getting great feedback from people that they're really, getting this. Before we talk about, if you don't mind, before we talk about some things about this joint venture, because of new people that are tuning in, what is this joint venture to begin with? And then we'll go down in some of the specifics about this news release.
So about a year ago, we started working on a relationship with the largest compound semiconductor manufacturer in the world, Sanan, which is based in China, headquartered in Xiamen at the Fujian province. Tom and myself, Suresh, our CEO, we made a trip there in first week of January 2020 to go and see their facilities, what they were about. We were all flabbergasted, frankly speaking. The scale, the world-class facilities, the know-how of scaling, manufacturing semiconductors was just incredible. They have aspirations of really becoming a big player in data centers, set up a world-class fab for indium phosphide, and saw that the Poet platform, the Interposer platform, had great synergies with what they are doing in order to provide a solution to customers, to module manufacturers, that could really change the game here and make an impact in the overall data center market. Okay, so we decided to set up a venture where Poet would provide their know-how of using the interposer into a optical engine, which includes photonic device, chip, all passively like semiconductor manufacturing, and which is all at wafer level and doing wafer level tests and then supplying to customers. So we have all that know-how. Sanan saw that, hey, they have the opportunity to invest in such a joint venture. So Sanan is providing all the capital, including OPEX and CAPEX, to fund the whole joint venture.
Wow.
POET gets our value through the IP that we transfer there. And we are setting up this company, or have set up this company, Super Photonics Xiamen, which will now assemble these optical engines using our interposer and devices from Sanan, as well as devices that POET has qualified or working on, and produce and supply these optical engines. So this is really, so it's a assembly, test, and sales. So it's commercializing POET's interposer platform into a product and then supplying those products to customers.
It seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, it depends on how you measure time and so on and so forth, but has it taken a long time for this to get up and running? Have there been challenges, or is that just a perception because this is such a sophisticated joint venture that you're running right on schedule?
So, George, I would say in relative, everything is relative. So what we are doing and what we are doing in China, factoring that in, I would say we are moving at a pretty good pace. Especially getting a joint venture of such, where there's technology know-how transfer, there's capital investments, there's incorporation of company in China. Doing all that and doing it during these times where we can't even travel there, during the pandemic. So doing all that and having joint venture companies incorporated in China with foreign partners and all is not, it goes through regulations, as you can imagine. So the answer to your question, no, it hasn't taken more than due time. I do believe with my experience again in working in China market for the last 25 years, that yeah, we've done, again, not to pat ourselves on the back, but I think we have moved forward at the right schedule. It also comes with, support, which has been tremendous from our partners in China.
The magic question that everyone's probably thinking of is, when do you think this joint venture, SPX, will be in a position to start assembling and testing optical engines?
Yeah, so great question. As we put in our press release today, that the equipments have all been ordered. Okay, they are now getting based on lead times. So in the April-May timeframe, the facility already set up, and this facility right now is in the same. So they have leased a portion of that with clean room and highly set up for manufacturing, semiconductor manufacturing, which is already there. So the equipment guys will be installed. So in the April to May timeframe, we are expecting that all the first phase equipment would be in place, and then subsequently we'll be starting building samples and doing low volume production and going from there.
George, I'd just like to point out that we signed this agreement on October 21st. So yeah, so what is that, 4 months, 5 months, where it took us about 4 of those months to actually get the company registered in China, because that's a complex process. I think that Vivek signed and chopped at least 4 original documents that I know of, or you signed one document 4 times.
Multiple times.
Multiple times that was coming back and forth via FedEx. So all of the translations that are required, everything, took a fair amount of time, but now, everything's in place and POs are being issued. We have staff that Vivek will talk about later. So I think it's really been a good effort in a very short period of time. And our shareholders will remember that a less complex deal, which was the sale of Denslite Semiconductors, took some 2 years to complete. So that's just the way things are in international business, especially with China.
Tom, while we're talking to you, you guys valued the joint venture at $50 million US. So this is no small joint venture. This isn't George Com and Poe Technology getting together and throwing something on the wall and see if it sticks. What was the basis of that $50 million valuation of the JV?
Well, the Chinese government requires that any intangible that is counted as capital that's contributed to a company be valued by an independent third-party valuation firm. So we did use a firm that's approved in China. We described the limited amount of IP that we were transferring to the joint venture. And by the way, that IP has to do with the assembly, the test of devices, not with the fundamental IP related to the fabrication of the interposer itself. So it's only taking the interposer wafer and flip chipping devices onto that, testing at wafer scale, singulating, which is a number of process steps, along with the know-how of how to operate the equipment that's used for that. So that valuation came in at $22.5 million from the third-party valuation firm. And the balance of the 50 million is essentially the capital that has been committed by Sanan that they will be putting into the JV over a period of about 18 months to 2 years. So they've committed that amount of capital. Once that's in, and we will have about 47 or 48% of the joint venture ownership, and Sanan will have 52, 53%, depending on how everything works out. Beyond that, we don't really expect there to be much needed from either of the partners. We think that the JV will be self-sustaining after that. But if it is, then we'll put in proportionate to retain our proportionate ownership interests.
If all this goes well, Tom, you've previously disclosed that the revenue opportunity for sales of optical engines through this joint venture could reach $250 million by 2024, 2025 timeframe. How'd you arrive at that figure?
Well, fortunately, we have in the company some real experts on photonics devices that have been engaged with other customers in their previous lives and know how photonics devices are priced and what their true cost is and the cost of certain fabrication and testing steps. So we went through a pretty detailed cost analysis of what's in the market today. We looked at the kind of discount that we could provide to our customers while maintaining a good, healthy margin for the joint venture company. And when we looked at that, those price reductions were still pretty substantial. They were depending on the device, they're in the range of 25 to 40%, which could spell the difference between a customer being profitable or not being profitable in the sale of optical transceivers. So when you're giving a customer that kind of discount and you're giving them the possibility of being profitable, we think that we can acquire a market share pretty rapidly in each of the segments. So we looked at each of the speeds and the types of optical engines that we would be delivering, the kinds of discounts we could offer. And I think in no case do we exceed about 30% of the market that's being projected for these devices over time. And of course, we expect those market shares to not be instantaneous, but to rise over time and then plateau and then even decline. And so given our knowledge about what the pricing is going to be for transceivers and the optical engine component within those transceivers, we developed a model for the revenue generation. And so that was the basis. It's a very fairly detailed business plan that included that. And so that's where that opportunity of 250 million, 200 to 250 million came in. And so we wanted to let people know when we announced this joint venture of the size of the opportunity in these what amount to relatively limited opportunities for port overall.
Vivek, in order to hit those kind of numbers and with execution, planning, everything, you have to have a good team of people in this joint venture. And it looks like Poet had a major role in appointing both board members and management team members to the joint venture. Can you comment on some of the people who've been hired, because they look like there are some impressive people there?
Sure, yeah. One thing to add again, what Tom was mentioning on the positioning and the value proposition.
Sure.
Geographically, also, this is very strategic because we are a supplier of these optical engines to module manufacturers, optical module companies, and most of them are in Taiwan, basically. So, to your question, we did have access to really experienced talent. We needed to know as well as have enough credibility to attract them to join it's a startup, Super Photonics. So we have been able to attract significant talent. The leadership, of course, it starts with the leadership, and leadership attracts more talent. So the general manager of the joint venture is the one who headed up Oclaro's operations in China, also had a worldwide role. Also, has worked in big companies like and Huawei, and was able to attract next level of talent. The VP R&D or head of R&D comes from Huawei, HiSilicon, Oclaro in China, having done his PhD from the China Academy of Sciences, and then the next level. So there's a network that we were able to tap into, get this top-notch talent into Super Photonics. So we are building on that. We will in the press release by end of the year we expect in the joint venture here. And then also you mentioned about the board. So the board was it was very clear in the joint venture that Poet would appoint or identify the general manager, which would be one of the board members, appoint or identify the CFO, which will be one of the board members. So those were two identified. Then Sanan has nominated Dr. Wei Zhong, who is the CTO of Sanan IC, to the board. Dr. Sun is a technologist and executive in this field. Has worked with companies like Finisar, Huawei, and then now heading up Sanan IC's 5G and optical business. And then also we jointly appointed a fifth board member together, which is a prominent scientist, researcher in the field of photonics in China, Dr. Huang. He's from China Institute of Sciences, very, very prominent and well-regarded, individual in the field. So it's Sanan also, and I have me the board member, and Dr. Sun has appointed me as a vice chairman. So this team of individuals or boards that I'm a part of is also quite significant. Very few companies, even companies who've been in this business for decades, can say they have such prominent, stature of individuals on the board.
Well, I was about to say, should shareholders take a great deal of comfort in that third-party validation that you're able to attract this level of team members, both board and management team, to the joint venture? Because on the outside, we don't really know, most of us, right? How good is this joint venture going to be? So it's great to see that almost before customers the first third-party validation comes from the kind of people who join it. And should
Right.
we be all taking a lot of great comfort in that?
Absolutely, George. Personally, I would say that we're able to attract talent, because when people who are moving from other prominent roles in prominent companies, moving to another company, and in this case, Photon, they are doing their own due diligence. They've been in the industry, they know the network, they know the reputation, so that they are providing all endorsement and confidence is substantial, right? At this, we've said this before. A company like Sanan IC or Sanan to take also joint venture with Poet also gives a lot of credibility to what we are doing.
I'm glad you kind of brought up that last point, because joint ventures, like any relationship, marriages, partnerships, they can start out with the best of intentions, but sometimes personalities and just philosophy can get in the way, right? What's it been
Yeah.
like working with Sanan so far?
Yeah, that's again a very, very good point, and especially is cultures which are not only where what the heritage of the people are, but the culture of the business, the location, how work is done. Like the earlier question, did it take a long time, and so on. The support and the proactiveness that we have seen from Sanan IC, to me, I've not seen my experience companies, doing acquisitions and all, that they were so open and available to execute on things. Even before the company was incorporated officially, they already provide the support team. They provide team on board, had their own people supporting, could go on and not stop. So the I believe this up culturally, technologically, strategically, and geographically provides a great opportunity.
Okay, so the marriage is still going strong.
Yeah, it's been okay, but I think we are looking forward to a great partnership and a great business success.
Last question, guys. I want to go outside of the JV, outside of Poet here. Just doing some reading. There's been a lot of press about industry-wide delays in the production of semiconductors, even to the point of auto plants being shut down for lack of components. Does this impact Poet at all?
It is unprecedented, or in the last 20 years, let's say. In 2000, there's probably a close comparison when there was a big hype of optics and all, if you recall. So the fabs are oversubscribed by multiple times. So we do use a fab, a CMOS fab, which, although the relationship is great, there is delays. So we did suffer getting our wafers back, getting our tape outs, masks, and so on by a couple of months. Luckily, with our influence and relationship, we were able to limit it to 2-3 months. What really the impact it has had on us is in getting our samples out, that we were counting on these by a couple of months. So that's really the impact. It does not change our goals, our timelines in getting to customers, getting business going, but there has been an impact. So I cannot say otherwise.
But I would also probably jump in and say that's not a negative impact, because it's not as if this is unique to Poet. So whoever you're getting the samples out and so forth, they're understanding of the fact that it's industry wide, not Poet specific.
Yes, in fact, just today I was talking to a customer that we are working with, and we've been sharing, and they were like, yeah, they're seeing it everywhere from all other components and things like that. So yeah, you're right.
Go ahead, Tom. You want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. So we've been saying all along that this year is a time for getting samples into customers' hands, and that our expectation for significant revenue doesn't appear until 2021. mean, even though we're a couple months delayed with the samples, we don't think it's going to have a material effect on 2021. And the reason is that we're producing this year very limited samples for alpha and for beta samples, which beta samples go into the hands of customers. What we should be focused on and what we are focused on are design wins, because that's what's really going to determine, what 2021's revenue profile looks like. And we don't see that that's going to be impacted, except for the fact that, there's going to be somewhat of a delay in getting beta samples into customers' hands. But we don't think it's a material concern. That's why we haven't put out a press release saying that our business is going to be materially impacted. We just don't think it's a significant delay.
And does the industry think that this is like look, every industry goes through these kind of situations every once in a while, bottlenecks. I don't think there's an industry in the world that hasn't gone through. But does it look like the problem will be rectified in short order, I guess? How does it look?
I think it depends on the supplier, but it's been the practice of POET for as long as I've been there to always have, plans A, B, and C. And so, if one mask shop can't deliver within the period of time that we need it, we'll find another mask shop. And so we have backup relationships. So even if it continues, I think that we will do everything we can to mitigate the effect on us, because this is obviously an important time for us getting samples out to customers.
All right, gentlemen. I mean, unless anybody have any last comments before we end it here.
I'm good.
Thank you.
No, thanks for you guys and for joining. And look, normally the progress of a joint venture wouldn't really make for news or interview worthy, but the fact of the matter is, this is such a big joint venture. Like we talked about, you guys have valued at $50 million, and you've disclosed revenue opportunity for $250 million by 2024, 2025. So I think it's important for all shareholders to get this kind of an update on the progress, what's happening. Most of it's good news. You have this, semiconductor supply issue, but good that we addressed that as well. But overall, great to see that this relationship and this joint venture is moving forward. Can't wait to have you guys back.
Thank you. Yeah.
For everyone at home, you've been watching, or if you've been listening by podcast on Google, Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast platform, to both Vivek Rajgaria and Thomas Mika of POET Technologies. The company trades on the TSX Venture Exchange on the stock symbol PTK, and for our friends in the US under POETF, POET F, and that's on the OTCQX. For those of you who are new, we know that this isn't the easiest concept in the world to understand, but the good news is when you got small cap disruptive companies making new ways, that means they're creating potentially big new markets that haven't been seen before. And that's kind of like where POET's going. So we're helping you through your due diligence. Make sure you get to Agoracom, watch some of the previous interviews we've done with the company, especially at the beginning when at various times, either I explain the company or the guys will explain the company in layman's terms. Very important to understand. And then make sure you hop over to the POET website to do more great due diligence, because this is something that's happening right now. They got this great joint venture happening, and you should be doing your due diligence to find out if you discovered your next great small cap disruptive tech company. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day. See you next time.